In my humble opinion, this is the pinnacle of fantasy football. We're not talking about drafting. We're not talking about waiver wires. Today we have 8 trade targets for you, 4 buys and 4 sells. And to start today's episode, I'm going to give the privilege to Ty to talk about his first buy. If you're watching over on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. It is Mr. George Pickens. So Ty.
Yeah, the guy that missed out on all the fighting and tried to do his best by almost ripping off Reed Blankenship's head on a block in the red zone. Yeah, it's George Pickens. I think a lot of people are they're either hitting the panic button because George Pickens was involved enough, or they just think this is the same old George Pickens. And I'm just here to tell you that better days are ahead. I think this game against Philadelphia did not go according to the game plan that they had installed. I think they were, let's just say, a little more willing to run the ball just because you did not have a Jalen Carter problem in the middle of that Philly defensive line. And so you were able to establish a bit of a run game. I just think that better days are ahead where Dallas will need to throw the ball more often than what we saw in week 1 against Philadelphia. Brian Schottenheimer said in his press conference yesterday that Pickens was clouded a bit in coverage, which I found fascinating because if you actually watch the game, you saw that Philly was kind of letting CeeDee Lamb just kind of do whatever he wanted the entire game because it felt like every other play was a CeeDee Lamb play. And if you don't know what it means to be clouded in coverage, it means that a corner is playing closer to the line of scrimmage while still having a DB behind him. So in some weird way, it's a bit of a pseudo bracket. It's just more so on the sideline than it is over the middle of the field. And when I said too that Dallas may need to throw the ball more often in their next upcoming games, they get the Giants, they get the Bears, the Packers, and the Jets. You get 2 New York defenses that were just torn apart through the air with the Giants and the Jets. And then you get Chicago and Green Bay who can put up a ton of plays like we saw them do in week 1 and the potential to put up points, meaning Dallas will need to throw the ball as well, I'm assuming, because they're going to be playing from behind.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to be able to have week in and week out of being able to run the ball kind of how they wanted to in this game. I mean, it wasn't even pretty against the Eagles, but they did run the ball more. You play against Green Bay, who, stuffed the run pretty good against Detroit in this last game. And you're not going to be able to do that. And I just don't think they're going to be able to do that in general because it's not going to be sustainable when you have Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders as your 2 top running backs. The other thing I'll say about George Pickens, and a reason I agree with you, is watching Dak Prescott, it was pretty evident that Dak is back. Right, Dak looked good. The box score doesn't quite sit, right? Only 21 completions, 188 yards. It's not pretty, but he was 4 CeeDee Lamb drops away from having himself a pretty good night. And so I think George Pickens is just going to be more, like you said, involved as the season goes on. But Ty, when people are talking trade targets, they want to know, great, I'm supposed to trade for George Pickens, but what type of player am I going to give up to get George Pickens?
I think the easy answer is to say, find somebody that you're not high on that had a good week 1 performance. If somebody is hot and bothered by Quentin Johnston and you can package him up with another piece to go get a George Pickens, I think that's one that I would rather do because what I think George Pickens offers you is more long-term sustainability for your team, rather than just a 1-week fill-in type of player. Now, it may take a while to get there, but again, I hate to be so generic, but when it's week 1, and we've got a ton of players that likely won't be able to consistently put up the numbers that they did in week 1, those are the guys you probably need to start shopping around to go get some of these guys that didn't perform in week 1.
For sure. Let me give you just a couple names and you just tell me real quick. George Pickens or this guy. Let's start with Zay Flowers. Big week 1. Huge week 1.
Huge week 1. I'm probably going to hold on to Zay because again, I'm feeling very optimistic about how his usage has changed over the first 2 years to what it at least showed in week 1. Now things can change, but I've got a little more optimism on Zay Flowers now.
A Deebo Samuel.
I'm probably going to flip Deebo for George Pickens, and that may feel backwards just because we may get, a top receiver in Washington out of Deebo Samuel for at least the first 2-3 weeks until Terry McLaurin kind of gets up to speed. But I feel like you can capitalize on that right now.
How about a Chris Olave?
I'm going to flip Olave for George Pickens. In some weird way, Olave feels like a kind of Walmart George Pickens in the sense that like he's going to be the X receiver on the Saints, not going to score a whole lot because of the offense that he's in, but there's going to be volume for Olave. And I think you can sell somebody on the fact that he did just have 13 targets in his first game with Spencer Rattler.
For sure. Well, Ty, the people did it. They got us to 5,000 subscribers. Yeah. And we want to thank them. We want to thank you guys by doing a little giveaway here. We're giving away a Nico Collins signed jersey at the end of the week on our YouTube live right before the games where we're answering questions. It'll be me and Ty again this week, back at it with you. But all you have to do to enter, right? We want to keep it easy, is you have to be subscribed to the channel and comment on this video. That's all you have to do. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and join us on the path to 10K. Well, Ty, I'm going to talk about a guy that I've been hot and bothered by all season long. And there was no question in week 1 whether Jameson Williams was involved in this offense or not, right? There might be questions of, is Detroit good? No, they were historically bad. I talked about that on the last episode. They averaged 3.1 yards per play. That was their worst in a game since 2020. But they had 67 snaps against Green Bay. Jameson Williams played on 65 of them. They ran 43 pass plays. Jameson Williams ran a route on 42 of them. That was more than Amon-Ra in both statistics. He only had 5 targets, but that was the most of any wide receiver, tied with Amon-Ra. Gibbs had 10 in the game, which kind of just shows you how it went, and yet he still only had 31 receiving yards. So shows you how bad Detroit was. I am optimistic that Detroit's going to start to figure it out again on offense. They're just too talented across the board. Am I going to say that they're all of a sudden going to be a top 5 offense again? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I think that I'm buying into the smoke that Jameson Williams is taking another step forward, that they gave him the contract at $27 million a year because they believe that's where he's going. That's where he's ascending to. So yeah, I think they're invested in him. I think he's going to be better, and they showed it on the field. It's just the team as a whole has to be better.
The team as a whole has to be better, but at the same time, how bad can it really get for Detroit? Is Detroit really going to finish middle of the pack? Maybe it may take a couple of games or two to really get going under a new play caller. But one of the highest scoring offensive teams doesn't just suddenly drop off the face of the earth in terms of scoring and in terms of offensive volume. So when you do see good teams from last year, good offenses from last year, kind of, stumble out of the gate a little bit, might be worthwhile to kind of target those guys in trades, because there's going to be a bounce back. At least that's what I'm expecting for this Detroit offense, because regardless of what you think about the play call, there are very, very talented players on that offense still. JMO being one of them. The contract, like you were saying, is a vote of confidence in that. So I completely agree. He's very similar to George Pickens in the sense that it's like, I'm not going to be spending a whole lot to go get Jameson Williams. But at the same time, if people are going to be holding on to Jameson Williams and he throws up another dud, I'm probably going to go a little bit harder after Jameson Williams then, because I'm going to say it's another game in the past and that we're going to be closer, hopefully, closer to what will be the eventual kind of re-emergence of a top unit.
Yeah, I go back to week 1 last season. Cincinnati scored 10 points against New England and looked bad. And then Joe Burrow was in MVP talk. So it brings me back to week 1 doesn't mean everything, right? It means some things. There are some things, like that's why we're having this episode, because some things are sticky from week 1. but it doesn't mean Detroit sucks for the rest of the year. If I have JMO, some guys I'm looking to trade for or trade away to get him, I'm thinking about Ricky Pearsall because I understand. I understand he's the wide receiver one. I understand he had 100 yards, but Brock Purdy's a little bit banged up. When those guys come back, right, he's still going to be fighting to be the wide receiver or the third best pass catching option. I think Jameson Williams is more talented. I'm looking at him. I'm looking to package Jaden Reed if I have him on my team, right? It might have to be a little bit more, but looking to package, going off of that touchdown and flipping Michael Pittman for him, right? Those are some of the guys that I'm looking to go get JMO. I'm even going to look to send my sell that I'll talk about a little bit later for JMO. Ty, I know you might not necessarily agree with that. I don't know where you're at. We'll talk about when we get to the sell. But that's where I'm at with that one. And speaking of sells, let's go back to Dallas here, Ty, because you're talking about Javonte Williams, and he does feel like that classic week one sell of, hey, we saw the touchdowns. Let's capitalize it. Is that really what it is, or is there more to it with Javonte?
That really is what it comes down to. I am always the type of fantasy player that says, I don't want to risk it. I know exactly what I can get for him right now, and I'm just going to do it. I know that you like to push your chips in a little bit more and say, wait, we can maybe get one more good performance and then maybe try to get even more. Whereas me, I don't know exactly if I can bank on that. And I should say this too. It depends on the player. Obviously depends on the opponent that they've got coming up, but I just don't think that we're going to be able to, or that we're going to see a 2 touchdown performance again from Javonte. And if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. He has the good matchup against the Giants to do so, but I just don't. I think what we saw against Philly was enough of an anomaly to say, you know what, I'm just going to go get what I can right now. And if I'm looking, if you find a league mate that's like, I want the running back ones, I don't want running back twos, I want lead backs and offenses, no matter what offense that they're on, go target that league mate with Javonte Williams. And if you can package and upgrade to, I will throw out this name. I don't think it's likely, but if somebody's way down now all of a sudden on Travion Henderson and the usage that he got, go get Travion if you've got Javonte Williams. But like there are some other names too, like DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, guys that you can at least feel like you have more certainty with Javonte over the course of the next 6-7 weeks. You're constantly going to be in the middle, or you're going to be stuck in the middle of, do I start him? Do I not? I don't know if I can trust the Dallas run game just yet. And again, I can't say this enough. It was an anomaly of a game that probably got flipped on its head a little bit after Jalen Carter got ejected. That to say that it meant nothing is just false. It changed really the entire game.
Yeah, and remember Rico Dowdle last year? He was the running back 23 on 235 carries. It's not necessarily just because you're the RB1 in Dallas you're going to put up fantasy points. So I think that's just something we have to keep in mind as well, because I don't hate it. I'm not in a rush to trade Javonte Williams, but like you said, if I can tear up and go get Travion, I'm going to take the risk on Kenneth Walker instead of Javonte. If I can go package for Alvin Kamara, Omarion Hampton, right? I'm not going to give up the world, but if I can add another piece and go get some of these guys, if I can really go up and get like a Kyron Williams, I'm all in on that. Those are pieces that I like. And I think Javonte is kind of that piece of, hey, he seems safe, seems to have a decent role. Let me go get something more exciting. And you can kind of let that manager just feel a little bit better, even though I don't necessarily think that they should getting Javonte.
I think a lot of people will get stuck on the names that we threw out and just go, there's no way I'm getting him in my league. The point that we're trying to make is that if you're able to tier up from Javonte Williams, do it. Whoever that is, tier up with Javonte Williams right now.
For sure. My sell, Ty, I think is going to get some people riled up.
It got me riled up when you first said it.
But if you don't want to trust us, you should go check out our Discord because we got over 3,000 people over there answering questions all the time. What a plug. Oh my gosh, I'm a natural. Get out of here, Lucas. You are no more. This is my job now. But we're talking Emeka Egbuka. And
man.
Hear me out. Hear me out. I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm not. Surprisingly, I know I was a little down on him yesterday. And after thinking about it, I probably was a little too down. However, we're gassing this guy up to new heights. He's playing Houston this week, who held the Rams to 14 points last week. So a decent defense, pretty good defense. And we got him as wide receiver 20 right now. We got him only 4 spots behind Mike Evans. Got him ahead of, guys like Tet, who I don't think he should be ahead of. I like DJ more. It's just, I think we're so narrative driven right now with Emeka of he was getting all the smoke during camp. Then we have the confirmation bias that, hey, look, 2 touchdowns in week 1. We saw Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors do it last year. Could he be the rookie that's their top 10 guy? I just don't think he's going to reach that ceiling. I think it's more realistic, and I'm going to get some hate for this, that his rookie season is closer to a Devonta Smith. 900 some yards, 70 receptions, 6 touchdowns, right? I understand it's not sexy. That doesn't make sense. You saw what he did. And yeah, he's a very good wide receiver. But I don't think it's that hard right now to trade him for, and I know some of you are going to hate these names that I throw out. Jameson Williams, flipping for his teammate Mike Evans. We talked about yesterday. You and Lucas both think that he could outscore Mike Evans. DK Metcalf. Oh, gross. How could you want that? I believe in these guys to score more than I do with Emeka. And I understand the upside, but I think this is just the point of where you can sell the highest on. I think he's a guy that you could go tier up right now to get Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr. Right? And I'm not saying 1 for 1. I'm not even saying you try like a 2 for 1. Like you give up a better running back or something like make a fair trade. But I think he's just holding enough value that you could get somebody who is worried about Amon-Ra, worried about Nico, to go, yeah, you know what? Let's take a chance on Emeka.
Yeah, we were talking about Emeka a little bit before we started, and it feels like there is a note of Emeka Egbuka can carry this for the entire year when we talk about Emeka Egbuka. And I think you and I would both say, I don't think we can say that after just one game. And let's also keep it real here. A 25-yard touchdown for his second of the day isn't exactly going to be the most sticky of plays, isn't going to happen every single week. And I'm not saying that the 3 catches and 40 yards that he had before that was a bad week. That would have put him at 14 in PPR points, which is a really solid week. But maybe we just need to take a step back. I like Emeka Egbuka. He's one of my favorite players right now in fantasy football because, again, just coming off of a 2-touchdown game, he kind of proved you right a little bit if you had some faith. I don't know if I'm exactly ready to sell off Emeka Egbuka just yet because I know that Chris Godwin is still out for a little bit, but I've expressed this too. Once Chris Godwin comes back, it is a reset. I shouldn't say it's a reset, but we have to reassess that Tampa Bay wide receiver room and how they're going to be utilized. Do I have faith that Emeka Egbuka can be a wide receiver 3 for your team throughout the year on a per game basis? I do. But if you know that there's somebody that's willing to pay up on him right now, thinking that they can get a top 20 and top 15 guy the rest of the year, which is wild to say, but if they think that, go sell him because I don't know if that's realistic for this rookie year.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate too, when we talk about a sell, Egbuka is not a guy that I'm like, you have to sell right now. He has to be gone week 1. You'll never get better than where you're at. I think he's at the top, but I don't think it's going to be a sharp decline. I'm not even saying he's going to be bad next game. I just don't think that he's going to outperform some guys that I think he's going to hold similar value to right now for the long term. That's what it comes down to. So I understand. Egbuka might look good for a couple weeks. He might look good the entire season. I just don't think he's going to look good as the rest of these guys. So that's where we're at. But Ty, let's take a quick break and hear from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the higher on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show.
We are back, and we got 2 more buys, 2 more sells. And Ty, you got one of our new hometown guys, a guy that I think we both started to appreciate even more after watching some of the runs he had on Monday night. We're talking Jordan Mason. So I'll give you the floor because I think I'm just going to agree with everything you say.
Yeah, Jordan Mason kind of showed out as the 1A back in this game against Chicago. 63-37 split in terms of rushing attempts between him and Aaron Jones in this one. They were the only 2 running backs that got carries. Jordan Mason, though, in the red zone had a 100% snap rate. Hello, that's important. That is very important. I think we can also generalize it too, just like Dwayne McFarland did. Jordan Mason was the run attack leader and Aaron Jones was the pass attack leader. Maybe that's a little more game script dependent, just because Minnesota was playing down majority of the game before JJ McCarthy went full Superman on the bit and just decided to generate a huge comeback. But in my opinion, the reason why we saw more of Mason than Aaron Jones was because Minnesota just could not run the ball outside the tackles. They tried to do it in the first half, and it was getting shut down every single time. And we talked about this over the offseason. It's a great change of pace. It's a great tandem because you got a guy in Jordan Mason that can effectively run the ball between the tackles, and you got a guy in Aaron Jones who can do the same thing just outside of the tackles. So you have a ton of flexibility in terms of what the defense is playing you. And what we saw last night is that Chicago was selling out to stop the outside runs, and everything between the tackles then was opened. And Jordan Mason took advantage. Jordan Mason is a bit of a risky buy just because there's nothing that says that like we're going to get that exact usage week in, week out. For all we know, next week could be an Aaron Jones game because it's going to be, runs to the outside are more effective than the ones between the tackles. Totally fair. But the reason why you want to invest in Mason right now is because he's going to be getting the red zone looks in this offense, on an offense that can put up points. You put up 21 points in the fourth quarter. If you're able to score like that often in a quarter, that gives me some hope that you're going to be able to put up points maybe throughout the entire game, not just in one quarter.
Yeah, I think you watched it too, the splits. Aaron Jones was used much more. They split him out wide. He had that pass interference that they missed on. He had the touchdown where he was running away. So I think that's definitely, I think that the volume is going to stick for Jordan Mason is what I'm trying to get at. And I think he's more of the David Montgomery of this situation. It really looked like, at least last night, that's what the Vikings are going for. I think it was Ian Hartitz put out a middle-class man's David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Not quite a poor man's, but not quite the same thing of this little thunder and lightning combo. But Ty, I need to know how spicy you're going to get out. I want to play a little name game here again with Jordan Mason. Of how hot and bothered are you by Jordan Mason right now? Are you flipping him for his teammate Aaron Jones?
That's a tough one just because Aaron Jones does get receiving work. So I'm probably going to lean Aaron Jones still, but it's closer than I probably would have had. Than we initially had it out of the gates.
How about the guy in Seattle who looks like he might be taking over a little bit, Zach Charbonnet?
Man, I'm probably going to say Mason on this one. I don't mind Charbonnet, but I think the thing that you're going to have with Charbonnet is just Ken Walker looming over his head for almost every game this year, right? Like, for all we know, Ken Walker could still be getting ramped up. He didn't look the same in week 1, so maybe the injury will linger a bit, but you will always have that risk kind of looming no matter how many games Charbonnet is kind of the lead back there.
All right, 2 more names for you. We're going to go Matthew Golden.
I would say well, I think it depends on your team. If you need a guy to contribute right now, go get Jordan Mason. But if you're willing to play the long-term game, sit on Matthew Golden.
Okay, and then the last one, we'll go with Isaiah Pacheco.
Gosh, I knew you were going to ask me about him. Oh, that's not fun. That's not fun.
It is a gross one.
You're cruel. Honestly, I'm going Jordan Mason. And that's wild, but the Pacheco usage in game 1 is alarming. And that was not in my cards for this year. And to see that in week 1, not a good look.
Definitely not. Speaking of Pacheco, let's talk about a guy who is in the same game as him, Mr. Omarion Hampton. Omarion or Marion? Which one is it? This feels like
Amar's bar.
Amar.
Like
yep. Bajan. Omarion Hampton. And Tyler, I'm going to be honest. I was actually more optimistic after watching that game than I was before the game on Hampton. And the reason was he played 80% of snaps. 80%. Najee Harris played 12% of snaps. Now I know they're easing him back in. But even in crunch time, when they needed first downs to ice the game, they went to Hampton in those situations. They already are showing, we trust this kid. We're going to put him out there. And I think it's going to be obvious pretty quick. He's the more explosive back of the two. So if he already has the trust and he looks better on the field, it just really feels like, how is Najee going to really chip into this offense? I was happy to see him get 15 attempts in a game where Justin Herbert threw for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, another 2 receptions on the ground. And we talked about in the last episode, that Chiefs defense was very good. Right, their front is good against the run. And so, yeah, I really do believe in Hampton. What are your thoughts on Hampton? Do you think it's too early to start buying in? Do you think people are still a little too hot and bothered? Or do you think the price is right where you'd go kick the tires on it?
I think a lot of people will be more on the hold side of Omarion Hampton and not be so willing to sell him off after just one game. But if you know somebody that is willing, I would say go for it, because Omarion Hampton, like you said, didn't have like the flashiest of games. But what was encouraging is that this offense has enough faith in him already to give him 17 touches. Now, 17 may not be a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, because you've got guys that can get 20 carries a game and all that stuff. But like you said, the snap counts are important here. For playing 80% of snaps, like that's big time stuff for a rookie running back. So I wouldn't be surprised if most people are saying, I'm going to hold. I'm not selling him just yet. But at the same time, Omarion Hampton might be the guy that maybe with some persistence, you may be able to kind of prime away from your league mates. That's a Cam tactic, by the way, of just being persistent enough over like the course of months, and people will finally just kind of give in and then give you the guy that you're actually going for.
Yeah, I'm what can I say? But I think he has. I can't even defend it. I have nothing to even come back at you with that. But Hampton is a guy I believe could be a top 12 back this year, and so Chuba Hubbard, James Cook, if Kenneth Walker, Kyron Williams, I'd be okay. Right, tearing down from Kyron for sure. Right, I'd like hopefully to get a little bit more for if I'm with Hampton, but I'd trade for Kenneth. I'd throw a sweetener in for Kenneth Walker right now. James Cook, I'd trade straight up. I'd throw Dobbins or Aaron Jones in a bigger sweetener to go get Hampton. Right, I think that he's worth going to get, and overpaying for what you think he's at right now, I think is all right, because I think it's just going to get better. I'm not saying like, oh yes, go out right now and give Bucky Irving for Omarion Hampton, but I think that you can slightly overpay versus what you perceive as his week 2 value versus his season long value. And Ty, you're starting us with our only non-running back or wide receiver, Mr. David Njoku, and explain to us, why are you selling? Why are you selling our guy?
Because I think the time is right. I think you have a golden opportunity to kind of take advantage of some of your league mates who may have a George Kittle who was just placed on the IR on Tuesday. You could sell them to a Brock Bowers manager who may be without Brock Bowers for a game. Maybe that's a little optimistic, and maybe people would rather just stream for a week and then go back to Brock Bowers. But I would also say, take a look at the Brock Bowers usage. It's a little concerning. But again, I think it's a golden opportunity to move on from what people may perceive to be a really solid piece. And I don't want that to sound like I don't think Njoku is a really nice piece. But what we saw in week 1 is it was interesting, is the best way to say it. He's still the tight end 1 in terms of the play time here in Cleveland. But what we also saw was Harold Fannin with 9 targets, with Cedric Tillman with 8 targets, Jerry Jeudy with 8 targets, Dylan Sampson with 8 targets, and Njoku walked away with 6, which is still a decent number. But the point I want to make is that I'm concerned that we're not going to be getting the same David Njoku of years past, in the sense that he is an elite target getter. When we talk about tight ends, we try to predict who's going to be one of, if not some of these top tight ends by year's end, we look for 3 big things. We look for volume, we look for yards per route run, yards after the catch, and touchdowns. Touchdowns is kind of the yards per route run is kind of the odd one out of the bunch there. But Njoku always had the volume to intrigue, I'll call it, because of how often because of how much they spread the ball out in this game against Cincinnati. I'm a little concerned that we're not exactly going to be getting big volume David Njoku. Can he prove me wrong? Can he match the numbers that Harold Fanning got or that Cedric Tillman got? Totally can. But I don't think it's going to be as consistent as we have seen it in years past. And again, like I said, I think you've got a golden opportunity right now with some of the injuries at tight end, and people kind of, I don't want to say they're panicking, but scrambling to find a better tight end than what they currently have. I think you can kind of take advantage and kind of dangle a little David Njoku in front of them. And if they bite, you can sell them for a little bit more than you probably would get if everyone's healthy and everything is perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to sell on Njoku. I don't know if I'm going to get enough where I feel like it's worth it is my biggest concern. I also believe in Njoku still. I know the usage was scary with Fannin and, the 2 wide receivers that factored in. I still think he's the best pass catcher in this offense, so I have faith in that. But yeah, so I think that's just my biggest concern is I still think he's the best pass catcher, and I'm just worried that I'm just not going to get enough that it's going to feel worth trading him. And then we have our last sell, and I know what you're thinking, Cameron. Jaylen Warren, this isn't exactly a world beater. This isn't going to change my team in the way some of these other guys might, and I understand that. But when I look at Jaylen Warren, I look at a guy who showed a little bit of value who could very quickly have no value in the upcoming weeks, and that's my worry. In the highest scoring game of the week, 34-32, not highest scoring, second highest scoring, obviously highest scoring. We all watched it, Bills-Ravens, fantastic game, but Aaron Rodgers isn't going to lead this team to 34 points that often. And, in a game like this, you're going, oh, right, Jaylen Warren had a bunch of receiving work. No, just 2 receptions. The other thing that scared me, Kenny Gainwell led this backfield with snaps this week. And it wasn't a early down, third down work kind of mix. They mixed it up pretty interchangeably. Caleb Johnson not involved at all. And I think that's just going to change as the season goes on, going to make this backfield even more messy. I'm just looking at it and going, I got to get rid of Jaylen Warren while I can. If you could trade him plus to go get a Pacheco, Charbonnet, if someone's really freaking out about Kevin Walker, right, they'd have to be a much bigger plus to go get him. Those are the type of players that I would be targeting. Even David Montgomery, I would take over Jaylen Warren right now. Ty, any thoughts on Warren? You thinking, who cares kind of a player right here? Or do you think, yeah, let's move on and just find something new?
Well, maybe a little bit, just because we talked about this in the live. It was a bit of a Rodgers revenge game, and sure enough, that's what exactly came out in the post game. And I was like, I called that one. What was interesting, you touched on it a little bit, but the usage between Kenny Gainwell and Jaylen Warren was pretty interesting because, yes, Gainwell led in terms of snaps. They split the early downs pretty evenly. Warren had one more early down snap than Kenny Gainwell. But Jaylen Warren got the short yardage and the goal line snaps. Kenny Gainwell got the third downs and got the 2-minute drill. And maybe it's oversimplifying to say that Warren took on the Najee Harris role and that Kenny Gainwell took the Jaylen Warren role. But it's a pretty clear split between these two. And like you said, are we going to be banking on a receiving touchdown every week from Jaylen Warren? Are we going to be banking that he's just all of a sudden going to take over everything? Is he going to become the bell cow here in Pittsburgh? I don't think so. And then again, you're going to have this Caleb Johnson kind of emergence kind of looming overhead until it actually happens. So I would agree with you. If you're able to package a Jaylen Warren, I would move on from him. I don't think we're going to be getting 34 points from Pittsburgh every single week. So maybe there's some intrigue. Somebody's looking, they drafted a Tony Pollard and they're just not convinced that he's going to be that great, or they drafted a David Montgomery and they're like, man, I could use maybe another option at running back. I would I would float Jaylen Warren out to people and just be like, hey man, lead back in Pittsburgh when he really isn't the lead back.
Definitely. Well, that wraps it up for us here. 8 trade targets, 4 buys, 4 sells. This will be a weekly installment through, I think, week 13 until we make a little bit of pivot, because your trade deadline is over and you can't trade anyways. So you don't want to hear us talk about trade targets anymore. We will be back tomorrow with starts and sits. I think we're talking 18 different players. Starts and sits at the wide receiver and running back position, and then streamers for your quarterbacks and tight ends. So do not miss out on that, because you might miss out on me calling the week 2's Keenan Allen, and you don't want to miss that. So make sure you subscribe so you can get in on that jersey contest. Remember, all you got to do is comment below. If you want to follow us on the socials, you may have noticed that Tyler and I had our Twitter handles switched the entire time.
Gotcha, guys.
We did not notice till the end. So hopefully you aren't following Tyler and seeing my face and following me and seeing Tyler's face and being upset. All right. Just follow both, and then you don't have to worry about which way it was. But he is at Tyler_Plath, and I am at Camelot FFF. We are the FFLs on Instagram, FFLs on the X. I don't know why I did it that way, but whatever. The Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, and then Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts on YouTube. If you're, as like Lucas says, a YouTuber through and through. Thank you again for 5,000, and we will see you tomorrow. Deuces.